You're listening to a Rock Candy podcast.
Hi, my name is Stephen Long, and I host a show here on Rock Candy called Sacred Tension. It's about the spiritual discipline of asking questions. If you find yourself uncomfortable in your faith, or if you find yourself caught between modern science and ancient religion, or if you're curious about the journeys of others who are sorting out faith and doubt, Sacred Tension is a place where nothing is off limits. You will find conversations with pastors, cult experts, spiritual leaders, and skeptics, all discussing the ways we navigate the faiths we were given. Find Sacred Tension right here on Rock Candy and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome to the Eleventylife podcast.
What's up, unicorns? Welcome to this week's episode of the Eleventylife podcast. It has been a minute since we have had an episode come out, and I'm really stoked to start kicking things back up again. Big hugs and thank yous to everyone who has been streaming our brand new single, Weird Ones, on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. You guys are absolutely wonderful. Thank you for hitting those heart buttons, for adding it to your favorite playlists. We are very grateful to be a part of your listener library. And big hugs and high fives to all the beautiful unicorns over at the Eleventylife Facebook group. You guys are absolutely wonderful, and the world is a better place because you are in it. I don't want to waste anyone's time with this, right? We have an absolutely killer episode planned for you with none other than Ben Cramer, aka Old Sea Brigade. Ben is absolutely my favorite kind of chill in a person and in music. And if you are not familiar with his work or his songs, he has a brand new EP out right now called Monochrome, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I encourage you to head on over to the show notes and click around until you get there. In typical Eleventylife fashion, this episode ran a little bit long, so we have split it up into two parts for you, and both of them are absolutely fantastic. I had a lovely time with Ben. We get to talk about everything from the process of making his brand new album that's coming out to the inner workings of the Nashville music system, how that affects creativity in some people, and we also just get to shoot the shit about the inner workings of what it's like to wake up every day and do music for a living. I think you're going to love it, and we are going to get right into it. But really quick, I just want to give an extra special thank you to everyone who is ordering anything and everything from the Rock Candy Recordings online store. You guys help keep the lights on, and we are incredibly grateful. Okay, that's out of the way. Without further ado, here's part one of my conversation with Ben of Old Sea Brigade. Okay.
We got
awesome.
it. Is the sound okay on my side? I can make adjustments if you need.
Yeah, if you're good, we're good. I think if you can give me a check. Yeah. I'm good.
Cool.
I've got everything that you're doing.
Great.
Awesome. How are you?
I'm good, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I fucking love this vibe behind you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, is this your pad?
Yeah, it's my studio. It took forever, but it's done. Well, it's not done, but I can work in here now, so that's good.
What's left to do?
There's a potential bathroom that is honestly probably never going to get done. It will just be storage.
Just a hole in the wall where people piss into.
Yeah. Slash my backyard just right there. So, but
that's awesome.
There's that, and then there's a little booth that's also storage. Hopefully that'll get done soon. I'm just going to make it really dead sounding in there. So
yeah, absolutely. Are you still in Nashville?
I am. Yeah, I'm still in Nashville.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I guess we haven't seen each other it's been a year, basically.
Has it really been a year?
It's been over a year, because I think we were at the cabin like early September.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It feels like yesterday that we were walking around downtown and having drinks.
I know. Yeah, I was just with Owen. I told him I was hopping on your podcast.
Oh, that's so cool. How is Owen doing?
Owen's great. Yeah, he's just super busy and, doing a million different projects, but yeah, he's crushing it. Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, absolutely loved our time in Asheville and felt really grateful that I was able to come be a part of some of the sessions and stuff. I felt like we had some really, really fun times downtown and kept getting like chronic text messages from Jeremy about the snake issue in the cabin.
My God. That was the last day. And then I think we left a day early because we were like, we're over this. It was great. I will never forget that cabin, but
how did you actually get into that? Like, because I thought Jeremy told me that you guys were planning on doing a record like overseas in like Iceland or something. And then it was like something happened and it was like, no, let's just go to the mountains. And then you somehow via happenstance decided on some place that was like 20 minutes from us.
Yeah.
And ended up in this like crazy weird cabin, which I can only describe as being something that like if you are a cult leader, you really want to have a great weekend there with your followers.
There's a creepy photo on top of like once you walked up to the second floor.
That's right.
It wasn't a photo, it was a painting, and it was these two women whose eyes were like just completely black. It looked like something out of The Ring, but we took that down immediately and like put it in a closet, which probably was like, if you're in a haunted cabin, you probably shouldn't take down like that probably pissed off the ghosts. And that's why we had snakes falling from the roof. I mean,
that's true. But also like the cabin is also sort of shaped like it could have been built on a pentagram or something.
Yeah. And there were no curtains or anything.
That's so crazy.
So you would just be sleeping. You would look out into the woods, and there would be where Jeremy slept. There was a path that just went straight into the woods.
Yeah.
I was like, no fucking way am I sleeping there.
No.
I slept upstairs. And it was still creepy. It was really creepy. I think we were all creeped out.
No, yeah, absolutely. We were all creeped out. There was like there was a part of me whenever I came to visit you guys up there where I was like, oh, okay, so some of this creepiness is just living in the mountains. It is just like par for the course of like being here.
Yeah.
And like it's an ancient mountain range, like one of the oldest on the planet. And so of course, like when you're out there by yourself at night, it feels a little bit weird. But I also made the trek up to your cabin because like only Owen's car I think could make it up to where to where the cabin was. So I ended up like walking maybe half a mile.
You walked down by yourself. Dude. I remember offering, we'd had a couple beers, and I remember I was like, Matt, I'll walk down with you, man. I don't want you to have to walk by yourself. In my mind, I'm like, please do not take me up on this offer.
Yes. So the southern part of me totally picked up on the quality of your offer. And I was like, I know Ben does not want to get in a car and have to like chance not being able to get back up the mountain. So no harm, no foul, because it was fucking bonkers.
Yeah. Then there was like a hurricane that was supposed to hit like the coast, and like we were supposed to get a lot of rain. And then the owners of the Airbnb said we might get stuck up there. So then we were deciding whether to stay or go back to like Nashville or Atlanta. And we decided to stay, and it ended up not being that bad. But it was like a big decision to make.
So most of the time that we were hanging out, it was like Jeremy's cooking food. We're having a great time. You guys are like working on the record, doing some takes and stuff. Super, super fun. But like, I was not privy to any of the conversations that you guys were having without me there, where you were like, fuck it, let's go. Like, I don't want to, we can't stay here anymore. Like what was the actual straw that broke the camel's back, where you were like, this is just not a conducive like place for us to be creative because there's too many stressors externally?
I think I was getting ready to go see my now fiance. So I was getting ready to go to Sweden, and I hadn't seen her in forever. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that I was going from the cabin to Atlanta to fly to Sweden.
Yeah.
So I loved working on the record there, and we didn't finish the whole record there. We got a lot done, but we still had to do a lot remotely with Jeremy and Owen and I working in Nashville and stuff. So we felt like we kind of accomplished everything. And, like Jeremy and Owen both have little kids, so they wanted to get home. And like, I get it. I think we were there for over a week, I believe. And we had just done 2 days with a band, like two or three pretty intense days in Nashville before that. So we were just tired. I think like after going 10 days in a row or
yes.
even like 7 days in a row, I do this to myself all the time. Like last weekend, I'm getting ready to go out of town tomorrow and I work through the weekend, and I'm bad at like setting like work boundaries for myself. So I'll easily burn myself out, and I'll be like, why do I feel super anxious and like not creative? It was because I worked all day on Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday morning comes around and I'm not inspired at all. But going back to the cabin, I think our time there kind of ran up, and it was creepy. It was also beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, then like that snake that fell from, we were hanging out on the 3rd floor balcony, which is, where we would hang out all the time.
Right.
This snake, giant rat snake, fell from the roof and almost fell like on Owen's shoulders. And that's when we were just like, no, let's go.
It's too much. It's too much at one time. I totally understand that. You hit on something that I feel like I experience a lot, where it's like, I will just like wake up one day and I am not in tune with my body. And I will just like sort of feel like, how can I be creative? Like, I'm so stressed out. Like, I don't know what to do with this other stuff. I have no recollection of all of the like millions of things that have piled up over the last 2 weeks in my mind or in my body, to where I'm like, no, I literally can't do anything. And then whenever that happens, I start to immediately go into this guilt trip of like, yeah, but you live a really privileged life. Like, you live in America, you have like all of your basic needs are taken care of. The only thing that is being requested of you right now is to be creative. But so like, why is that so hard? And I immediately start beating myself up about that. But the fact of the matter is, like, there are things like happening in my body all the time, or especially in my mind all the time, that I have just learned to brush away. I have a body knowledge of like pushing it away. And when it all comes up, it happens all at one time. And I've just become absolutely debilitated. I don't know if you can relate to that at all, or if that's what your experience.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned as I've gone through it over the past couple of years, and I'm so lucky and privileged to get to work on music for a living and like have a studio. And so I feel bad like complaining about anything revolved around music, but there is something when it goes from, okay, I look back to writing songs when I was 16 in my parents' house in the basement or whatever. And like that was like the purest form of songwriting to me. I don't think I was writing great songs. I definitely wasn't writing great songs, but it was before any sort of, I didn't know really what record labels did or any of the industry stuff. I felt, I felt all this emotion, and it was like such a cathartic outlet to kind of process, a girlfriend breaking up with you or whatever.
Yes, absolutely.
So I find myself like chasing that feeling now that I'm 31 and been lucky to have been working on music for a long time. I've still chased that feeling of like just wanting that pure like joy of writing something and I that I'm proud of, and I feel has purpose, and I feel represents me, and that doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't have to happen all the time. I think it would be weird, because like otherwise you'd be like, well, I'm okay. This is maybe it wouldn't be fun because you're not chasing anything, because you achieve that same thing all the time. Right. So I find myself now, when I look at my weeks right now, I've been writing with a lot of other artists and like doing some demos that sometimes end up turning into a production or working on Old Sea Brigade stuff. But I feel like during the week, there's 3 days out of the week where I'm like, this is cool. Like, it's a job, whatever. There's one day out of the week where I'm like, fuck this. I hate this. And then there's one day out of the week where I love it and I feel amazing and like, have a really productive day. Then like go meet up with a couple friends, have a beer. And just like, I'm just like, yes, this is what I love. Like,
absolutely.
And I find I'm chasing those days now too. But I think it's on those days that I'm like best able to relate to how I felt when I was 16 writing songs in my bedroom at my parents' house.
It's weird because like the older that you get and the more that you kind of go through this, like the more you realize like you can't control those moments where it's like you can put all of the elements in place. Like, this person's going to come in. I know I normally have a good time with this person. I feel like we connect on a creative level. Like, I know that this person has the juice, and if I wake up this morning and I've got the juice, then like this is going to be great. But at the end of the day, you're just kind of trying to predict the weather is what it feels like for me. I don't know if you can relate to that metaphor at all.
For sure.
Yeah.
You got to show up. I mean, like I'm inspired by the fact that I could waking up one morning and just writing something that didn't exist. And like, I always like to get a little demo together just because then I can go back and listen to it and try to, I mean, obviously worst case scenario, I'll do a voice memo, but because I have a studio, I feel like I need to get a demo together. Then I usually spend way too long on that. That's a whole other thing.
Right. Yeah.
But the idea of waking up and creating something that out of air that you can't touch, but you can feel and you can hear, I think it's like magic. And it's sometimes even if it sucks, even if the song sucks, you still showed up and created something. And every now and then you can write a song that changes your life or changes somebody else's life. And if that sounds cheesy, maybe it is, but it's true.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody put it as clearly and as succinctly as you just did. But it's true. And sometimes I wonder like what that thing is. You can wake up one day and you can have this creative moment that you didn't have to work for. It's just something that you showed up for. And it feels a little bit different than all the stuff that it took you months to get to. That you had like, there's some things that you Brian Wilson your way to, you know, like over a year or 6 months. And there's some stuff that just like kind of happens. And the stuff that happens, I immediately feel distrustful of because it happens so quickly. And I forget that like, no, I've spent like 20 years showing up.
You learn all these tools. And I'm lucky I get to write with a lot of great songwriters and like, they'll have some interesting chord combination. And I'm like, oh, I've never done that. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what everyone does. Cause I dropped out of music school. I didn't pay attention. So
no. I feel like I learned so much more from getting in a room with people that I really respected, that I really enjoyed what their creative output was. Like, even if I'm like, just like walking around Guitar Center, this is going to be a super lame example, but like if I'm in Guitar Center and I see somebody who's like just shredding on the guitar and annoying the hell out of everybody there, the older that I get, the more likely I am to go up to that person and be like, hey, that sounds really rad. Show me the coolest thing that you know.
I thought you were going to say stop.
Tell me. No. I mean, I feel like I went through a huge portion of my life where I was just like, God damn it, everybody shut the fuck up.
Stop.
and now I'm just like, I just see people as sort of like doing their thing. And like,
everyone's trying to do their thing, and their thing might not be your thing or my thing.
It's like, yes, exactly. That's right. But I'm like, everybody knows something cool that I don't, because they're a different genome. They've had a different life experience. They learned their instrument differently. And so like oftentimes I can get cool things from people just being like, hey, show me the coolest thing that you know. Because I feel like everybody is secretly waiting for someone to ask them that, but everybody's really afraid to either show that thing or ask about that thing.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much from people that didn't even have careers in the music industry, where it's just like, oh shit, I've never thought about playing chords that way. The way that they'll explain something. It's kind of like just asking the universe to like tell you something that you don't know, or like, hey, surprise me.
Yeah.
And maybe half of it is like, you know, throwaway stuff, but maybe the other half is like it, you know, people have shown me chords or shown me ways about thinking about things that have totally changed how I've written for myself or for other people. And I kind of think that's beautiful. And the only thing that was keeping me from that was like this judgment that I was making. You know, when you walk in, you're like, God, I'm so annoyed. And it's like, well, a part of you is annoyed, but a part of you is like, I can't fucking do that.
But the other side is like, you walk into a Guitar Center, what do you expect?
Exactly.
You know, but you could take that metaphor into anything. It's like, okay, it's like you write, you're a producer, or you're a session player or songwriter, or whatever. Like, you're going to work with tons of people, and like, you're not, you know, sometimes people, you know, you're not going to hit it off with everybody, but a lot of times it's an ego thing. And like, as soon as you just sort of shed that ego, everyone, for the most part, 99% of people I meet are really fucking cool. Yeah. And I like, we always have a great time just hanging out, or people I meet, you know, in the music industry. You know, there's every now and then you meet one or two bad apples, but it's not ever really a huge thing. I think a lot of it's just like, I saw it more when I was early 20s and as a teenager playing in bands, and everyone was trying to figure it out. No one really knew what they were doing. So there's an insecurity thing. Yep. And I think that, you know, the ego thing is a self-defense. Where now everyone's like, I don't know what we're doing. We're just going to get together and write a song and hopefully it's cool. Or like, it's the same thing. Like if I'm going into making an Old Sea Brigade record, or if I'm going to produce a record for somebody, we'll talk about, what music do they like? What records do they like? How they sound, like what, records do you love the songs and all this stuff? And, what sort of vibe do we want to go for? And that's great to have those conversations, but you can't go into a record saying like, oh, I want this to sound like, Astral Weeks from Van Morrison or whatever. Like it's never going to sound like that. It's going to have its own thing. And I think that's part of the whole magic of it.
Yes. I love that. I really love that you see the quality in that. I feel like there are times where I have been like, I can get so inspired by a track, right? Somebody will turn me on to a new band and I'm like, wow, that's fucking cool. I haven't thought about things in that way. It's like stretching the limits of like my musicality or my brain or how I'm perceiving a song or how I'm delivering an idea. And then I'll like, this is just a completely different way of thinking about music or about thinking about ideas or how to translate them. And if there was any part of me that was like, oh, I'm better than that, or this is lowest common denominator, or I don't like that, or this was a top 40 song, so it must be just appealing to the masses, then you miss out on the fact that like everybody that's here, everybody that's making music in the room is an artist to some degree. Like,
and it's I didn't come up with this. I think I was listening to another podcast and someone said, it's like all of like art and like recording, and when it comes to the music side, it's some form of like imitation in a way, like you're influenced by it. And like, like there's so many times I go into making a record, I just want it to sound like the records I love. And then it ends up sounding like Old Sea Brigade, or ends up sounding like another artist that I'm working with.
The best way
we're all just like trying to copy, like not copy, but we're heavily influenced and trying to replicate records that we love.
Yeah. A feeling that record made us have.
Exactly.
Where it's like, if I go into the studio and I'm like trying to make us, and I'm like, oh, wow, like Ben came out with a super cool song. Old Sea Brigade song is super rad. It inspires me to write a track in some way. Whatever I come up with is not quite going to sound like Old Sea Brigade. No. There might be some of the like production techniques or stuff that somebody would lean into, but like there's this really great episode of SpongeBob that I feel like sums this up so succinctly, where it's like he's asked to like make these like 5-star French meals because there's like a new chef that comes in and they're trying to like up their game. Forgive me if I'm wasting your time with this,
no, but I love SpongeBob.
But I think it's important because I keep coming back to it all the time. Whereas like every single ingredient that SpongeBob puts into the oven or into the fryer immediately comes out a Krabby Patty, because that's what he is passionate about, right?
Yeah,
like
that's amazing.
You can take all of these different things, but like ultimately what you serve to everyone, if you're not just plagiarizing blatantly, really is something that got brought through your filter, and everything you have to offer has already passed through your filter one way or the other.
Yeah, that's why I love too, going back to, I think I was talking earlier about how I have to set boundaries now for myself so I don't burn myself out, because I will just work for 7 days, 10 days in a row, and then I'll be asking myself, why do I feel uninspired and all this stuff? So now I like to take time off and like travel and hang out with like friends and family and like not talk about music. Like living in Nashville, you go get coffee and someone's like talking about their manager or agent for Spotify.
right.
Which is probably why Jeremy doesn't live here.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely why. I don't blame him for that. But I think just separating myself from like the industry and or like the creative like creation side of it, and like just listen to make dinner with some friends and just put on a record, and we're like, we don't have to comment on the record. We can just let the record do its thing. We can just, let's just, bake some salmon.
Do you have I have a specific record that I feel like fits exactly what you're talking about. Whereas like if I have friends over and I put on Time by ELO, I don't want anybody to talk about the record.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about the snare.
I just want all of us to be like here, like listening to the record and allowing conversation to happen around it. Do you have a record that you're like, I don't want anybody to fucking talk about this when I put it on?
Yeah, I have a couple. I mean, I usually go for like Neil Young or something. I feel like he's good. Okay. Dinner time. Yeah. Have a glass of wine.
Yes. That's awesome.
There's this guy, Leif Bollebeck, who's from Montreal. I'm a huge fan of his, and I would listen to his music if I wasn't cooking dinner, but I just happen to really like it too when I'm cooking dinner. But it changes a lot all the time.
Yeah.
I'm probably not listening to like Norma Jean or
Yeah. Yeah,
as much as I love them.
That's a specific vibe. It doesn't necessarily make me more hungry, maybe more thirsty if I were to listen to that cooking dinner.
The heavy metal stuff is hardcore usually when I'm driving by myself, and because a lot of people don't get that.
Yeah, too. For sure. But, so like you talk about this moment that you seem to really put a magnifying glass on, where you're like 16 and this feels like this super prime portion of your creativity, where you're learning yourself, you're learning your artistry, you're figuring out how to let things out of you verbally, right? Or lyrically, and how to do those things. That can be a really formative time for everybody. I wonder if your experience in Nashville, because it is different, like being a musician in Nashville is different. I wonder if now that you have all of this knowledge of kind of like how labels work and how creativity gets disseminated to listeners, I wonder if that is something that you have been able to internalize in maybe a healthy way. And I'm placing judgments on this. Please feel free to like jump in at any point and like correct me on this. But is it something that has affected the way that you view creativity now, or is it something that you feel like you have assimilated into your creative process of like, oh, as I create something, I'm also aware that like I'm putting this into a system in a way that like when you were 16 and you were not aware of the system, that maybe there was a possibility that you could be more free with what you had to say or what you wanted to express?
I don't feel like I need to censor myself on what I want to say. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if I was doing like the pop country thing where literally everything does sound the same, and it's more of a product. You're packaging something up and you know that people are going to like the same song over and over. And if it makes people happy, it makes people happy. I'm not, I don't want to, that's probably a whole nother conversation I'll avoid. But, going back, living in Nashville, I have a general understanding of how the music industry works. I still don't really know, what every single person at a record label or publisher does. But
right.
I just know, like, I just kind of trust my gut, go with like my instinct. And like, if I like it, then I think hopefully somebody else will like it. And if me and the artist like the song that we wrote or produced or whatever, great. That's all that matters. Like as long as we like it, that's all that really matters. I think when I was younger, I did go into sessions looking to write songs to appeal to other people as well. And I think you can take that into mind, but I always write horrible music. When I'm, if I'm like, let's write a song for New Music Friday. There's I don't know if you follow there's Music City memes on Instagram, and it's incredible, but there's this whole meme of someone lighting a cigarette from the wrong way. And it says, when you start out listening to New Music Friday, then you go write a song. And that's the most accurate representation of that. But I try to just sort of trust my gut and like not like you can get lost in the noise of Nashville, and you could also use it as a tool and like realize there's a lot of really talented people here. And I want to surround myself with people who are, who teach me how to be a better writer and better musician, producer, and all of that. So I just careful about who I surround myself with. But luckily, most people are really, really cool. So
I love that.
Yeah, you can get really lost in it in Nashville. So you just have to balance it out. And I think the longer I've spent here now, I've come up with a system that really works for me. I can use I'm here for a reason because there's a lot of music here and amazing musicians, and use that as a tool, but don't get lost in the, playlist, Spotify, monthly listener.
Do you feel like that's the easy? Because my next question is like, what do you feel like is the easiest sort of rabbit hole to get lost down that sort of zeroes your focus into something other than being creative that hinders your creativity? I
mean, just general like phone addiction and Instagram, and I don't ever want to be like jealous of people.
Yeah.
Or like, I want to be happy and like celebrate my friends' successes.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to do sometimes. I mean, I think everyone would agree with that. Like you would say it's tricky when you're in a city and like everyone's trying to do to some degree the same thing. On a bad day, when you kind of catches you off guard, you can kind of fall into this comparison trap, looking at Instagram and who's playing where and who got what and all of that. But I think it's like everyone's on their own path.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know what everyone's going through. You can kind of slip easily and fall into those traps, but the more you set boundaries for yourself and you realize like, look, everyone's doing the best they can. And like, I'm at the point now where I'm like, I'm just super happy for all of my friends who like, you know, like my buddy Owen Lewis, who you met, and Jeremy too. Like they just, like, they're crushing it, like working on big records. And like, it's amazing. You know, I remember I talked with my buddy Dave Rowan, who's been my booking agent for a while. He told me some really good advice like 6 years ago about when you're coming up as an artist or producer or songwriter, it's like, it's not just you, it's your community, and the community lifts each other up together. Wow. And people had different moments, but it's like, you know, when you see so-and-so opening for Nathaniel Rateliff at Red Rocks, like you know, Nathaniel maybe used to open for them, or like they just, a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, like they're friends, and then friends invite their friends to come on tour. I mean, that's how it is for me too. Or like you join a label and you become friends with a lot of the artists on the label. And like, that's been the case for me. That's how I've ended up writing for a lot of people. So I'm really fortunate to get to do that, but it's the power of the community, which I didn't realize early on. I growing up in Atlanta, there was like this cool, like indie kind of like emo rock scene. It was like Manchester Orchestra, this band Oh Brother, another band called All Get Out. I don't know if they were from Atlanta, but I was a huge fan of theirs. But it was just this whole community. And I remember like seeing Cage's Elephant come through town, and they would play shows with them, and now they're some huge band. And so I try to just celebrate everybody's successes and try to stay the fuck off Instagram as much as I can. I never feel good when I get off of it.
I feel like
I'm so addicted.
That's such a mature way of looking at things, because you're right. There's no way to prepare somebody for. You sacrifice so much of a normal life in the hopes that like somehow this thing is going to work, and that you think that this thing is like everything that you are, and you tie your self-worth and your work ethic and like your value to yourself and to your family and to the universe into this thing. And you do it in such a weird, slow, seeping way that you don't even realize that it's happening. And then all of a sudden, like you have a friend who's doing the same thing, and you see them experience something really great, or they have a cool milestone in their career on Instagram. And you immediately see that and feel that dissonance. And the easy thing for you to do is to get super jealous, or to get super in your head about it. Or you have these thoughts in your head that just like pop into your head. Like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, I was working twice as hard. I was thinking about things twice as hard. I was putting in twice as much work. Like, why is it that they deserve that? And all of a sudden you're like, before you know it, you're there at that weird conversation of like, why do I feel this way? Oh, because there's a toxic part of myself that feels like I deserve more than what my friends have, because I feel like I worked harder than my friends did to get here. And then at that point, you have to be like, well, what do you want? What do you want out of this?
Yeah, it's all an ego.
Do you still want that friendship? If you want that friendship, you got to cut that shit out.
Yeah.
Because those pendulums swing so fast and so quickly.
Yeah, I've tried not to... I've been really working on this recently, of not defining myself through my success as a musician, not defining Ben Cramer because you just create your own personal hell that you can't escape.
Yes.
And you're going to have a good year. You're going to have a bad year. You could headline Glastonbury and all of that stuff, but you're not going to be on top forever.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy to just like have that define you.
Yeah.
And it's easier for me I'm still work on that a lot right now. But it's something I've been very intentional about, taking steps to okay, I write songs. I make music for a living. Very lucky to do that.
Absolutely.
Maybe I won't be doing that in 10 years or 5 years or 2 years. I don't know. Hopefully I am. Hopefully it's at least 10.
For sure.
The second you just don't define yourself through that, it's very freeing. But it's hard. It's really hard, especially like when I'm getting ready to go out on a tour in November, and like, okay, like if we don't sell a lot of tickets in one city, it's tough, like, it's your identity in some ways publicly.
Right.
But me and my fiance have talked about this a lot, even when we're on vacation. And I don't really post that much personal stuff on my Instagram, but we'll post like a story, or she'll post something, and it'll be, us having a great time. But then there's and usually, we have fun when we're traveling, but there's always like some shit that we have to deal with. Like the hotel that we had reserved, actually didn't have a reservation, and now we don't have a place to stay. So we like walk around the city, and like, then we reserve another hotel, but actually there's two of those same hotels. So we went to the wrong one. And then like, we haven't had anything to eat. Those are like, those are not real problems. I'm just saying, like, but then you post, I'm having a great time in Budapest, or wherever the fuck you are. I don't know what got me going on that, but yourself. It was important for you to say, because it's something that it's a hard won lesson that I feel like you probably have, and it's something that I actually really appreciate about you. It was one of the first things that I noticed about you whenever we like first hung out, or had drinks or whatever. I was like, I feel like I noticed this vibe about you that there's not a lot about you that is just vapid pageantry that you present as the person that you are. And the things that I've seen you do, the performances that I've seen you have, I feel like you present so closely to this baseline of what you are in real life that I was like, yeah, this is so cool. Like, Ben is a person. I feel like it's what like attracted me to you. I feel like it's why Jeremy likes working with you. I'm making a lot of inferences right now. I don't know. Jeremy could disagree with me on this, but I feel like you. I think he likes.
Yeah, like I think you have a genuineness of spirit and of person that doesn't feel like it's put on. It doesn't feel like your life, like your brand is not this like hype Instagram kind of thing of an artist. Like, you're a regular ass person, is very, very talented. I don't mean that in like a in a demeaning way. I just mean like in a very relatable way, where it's like, I meet you in real life, I hear your music, I'm like, these are all great, and they all coalesce together. I'm like, yeah, his music sounds like it is to experience him in real life. It's like, it's fun, it's calming, like it's intriguing, it's like all these different things. So
I don't think it was always like that. I think when you're younger, you try out a lot of different, versions of yourself until you kind of stumble.
What was the worst version of yourself that you tried out that just failed miserably?
Probably being like a cool sports guy. I like went to the gym a lot.
Sports guy.
Yeah, and drove a
That's great
Tahoe. Yeah, and I was like, I'll play music as a hobby, and I'll get a real job. And I remember that when I was going through that was when I was like 20, 21, and I had the worst anxiety of my life. And as soon as I decided to like get back into music and really go for it, a lot of it, I'm not saying it didn't all go away, but a lot of it did. And that's not to like undermine mental health issues by any means, but it just worked for me. It was like being focused and like staying true to myself. Because I think, deep down, if you're trying to like suppress something, it's going to manifest itself in like depression and anxiety and all these different things. I was lucky. I kind of got to go through that whole trip at a younger age. And I played in a lot of bands that I kind of played in a rock. I played in a rock band for a while, like loud rock band. I would listen to more heavy rock music, and then lived in Athens for a bit and listened to like the Grateful Dead all the time. And,
that is totally the vibe of Athens, is Grateful Dead.
Yes, for sure.
I feel like you summed it up in one band. That's great.
Probably the Widespread Panic.
Oh, okay.
I wish I was listening to REM more. I now listen to probably more R.E.M.
Yeah.
But, you're just kind of a product of your environment in a lot of ways too, and your surroundings. And
yeah.
I mean, I still don't listen to pop country music by any means, but I listen to a lot more like professional this is so funny. Oh, and I were just talking about this. We had dinner and we were talking about like how if he played like certain things that people loved in Nashville, like to his friends back home in Ireland, they'd be like, this sounds really pro. And I'm like, I could not think of anything worse than me like playing a song for somebody. And like and then I was telling him how I was at one of my oldest best friends got married in Idaho, and they're all like West Coast hippies, and they just drive around. They play like bluegrass music. They just love it. They don't really know much about the music industry, but I could imagine myself like playing them a song. And if they're like that I worked on, if they're like, it sounds really professional. That is the worst comment. I'd rather you just say I don't like it. It's
such a weird thing because I feel like that's what so many artists are going for. They're like, I just want somebody. I want somebody to hear what I'm doing. I want someone to experience my artistry in a way that they will validate as being professional. But the second that you get that compliment, it's almost like someone acknowledging that like you have reached a pinnacle of production where they like can acknowledge that it's on par production wise, but that it did not move them emotionally in any way.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
I mean, I guess there's certain elements production wise, but I don't know, there's no rules, but as a whole, like the whole idea of like the song with like the right production and the right mixer, like this sounds like it's ready for radio.
Yep, exactly.
Pack your bags. You're going to play to 2,000 people every night. Sometimes that works. It probably works a lot of times. That's not what interests me. Going back to about earlier about like self-identity and just being true to yourself. I mean, I was lucky, kind of like went through some of that stuff early on, and it gave me really good direction. And I've played in a lot of bands with older people. Mm-hmm. Like when I was 17, I played in a band with some guys who were 20, 21, and they, you don't really know anything at 20, 21, but you do learn. You can influence, a 16-year-old a lot, and like they're the ones that showed me Tom Waits and like that Greg Dilley from the Afghan Wigs, and
what a gift. Damn,
all these cool Godspeed You Black Emperor, like all these records that were so formative to my musical taste and stuff that influences me now. But I try to just like surround myself with people who are like also willing to grow. And I don't know if that goes back to the 16-year-old hanging out with the 20-year-olds, but it was nice. Like they're offering some advice being a little bit older than me. And Jeremy's always been a huge part of my life and huge mentor to me. So I'm grateful to have like found people like him and then go on the creative side. Like, I don't know, I've always been one of these artists where I go in and out of feeling like self-conscious and like imposter syndrome and all of that shit, feeling self-conscious about my voice. Like I was never really a singer. I'm a singer now because I write songs and I want to perform them. I'm not someone you would hire to play keyboards and sing background vocals and harmonize with you, because I would have to practice for like 2 months on all the harmonies and still probably not nail it. But with that, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do my best and hopefully people like it. And a lot of my favorite singers are not quote unquote like American Idol trained singers. And some people are great at that, but most of the records I like, that's not the case. And I love working with people who are amazing singers, because I feel like then I can write, it was like I worked with my buddy Luke Sattel singing, and he's an incredible singer. And we wrote a couple songs together, and it was so freeing because his voice is higher than mine. So he could cover like sort of the higher range of things, and I could cover the lower. And we put out some songs together, and there were no limits. Where like sometimes when I'm working on a song, I'm like, okay, this is cool. I want to do this on the chorus, but I know I think I've gotten a lot better as a singer. Like I go back and listen to songs I recorded, 10 years ago, but 5 years ago. Like my voice sounds completely different because I do think I know a little bit more of what's going on. But
was there anything that you experienced like going through that growth where you feel like all of a sudden you started thinking about your voice in a different way, or you kind of woke up one day and you're like, oh, I feel like I've sort of mastered this thing. I have these new like tools in my toolkit vocally that I didn't realize I had. Was there a moment?
Playing live.
Okay.
And seeing other singers sing and the way there's like so much mic technique and all of that, but just playing live and like getting my ass kicked, and also just sort of saying, fuck it. Like, you got to keep doing it. And I would hate to watch videos of like myself from, 6 years ago playing live.
When I think about like, especially what I saw happening in your, like the vocal sessions that you guys were doing here, I feel like your strength is in your tenderness. I feel like your strength is your vulnerability, if that makes sense. That you have a way of saying things, you have a way of projecting, a way of disseminating these really powerful emotional things through a vocal quality that is not, it's not a Kelly Clarkson thing. Like, right? That's totally different. Exactly.
Yeah, my own thing. And I think a lot of that came from like when I was 16, driving to Athens with these guys to go play Tasty World, which is a venue that RIP, long gone. But being in the minivan surrounded by Red Bull and like cigarette butts, and then be like, hey, you got to check out this Tom Waits record. I'm like, who's Tom Waits? And they play. I'm like, what the fuck is this? You think about it differently after you hear that. Yeah. And I also, and hanging out with Jeremy, like how we met, I was interning at the studio with Jeremy and Matt Goldman. And I remember Matt, like, he's like, hey, bring in a hard drive. I'll let you just, download my entire, like 10,000 song iTunes library, which maybe is illegal. I don't think anyone cares. No one gives a shit now. But there was it was like every Radiohead record and every Bob Dylan record and like B-sides and Van Morrison, and it was just tons and tons of things to be influenced from. And okay, so when people say that, I feel like there's so many times where I'm having conversations with people, or I'm listening to artists have conversations on podcasts or in interviews where they will talk about these albums and they'll be like, oh my God, it was so like transformative. But it's kind of like listening to somebody talk about playing with a toy that you've never played with before, right? Or describing a dream that you haven't had. So you're kind of like always on the outside of it looking in. And sometimes I really want to dig farther into that. Like, were there some really important like songs or albums or artists? It sounds like Tom Waits was a big one for you. But like, are you able to sort of dig into that viscerally and explain what it was that flipped in your mind? I'll give you an example. When I started listening to Kid A, I started thinking about chord structures in songs differently. Like, because I grew up on punk rock and roll, like it's riffs and power chords and all of that stuff. And when I started hearing that record, I started hearing this complexity of sound that I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what they were doing. Like, as ignorant as I was just like, oh, there are fifths and sevenths and fourths and suspended things that are happening like in these chord structures. And all that I really know is that they're making me feel a certain way and that I don't have a mastery over that. I can't sit at a keyboard and like make that chord. And that's what made me want to dig into what that was. So I started getting into synthesizers. I started getting into like chord structure. I started getting into, when I play this in conjunction with this, or I add this weird note that is not in the scale, it makes me feel a certain way. Do you have those moments that you might can relate to? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm trying to think lyrically, I remember discovering on Mule Variations, I think was the record from Tom Waits. Like, I mean, I think the big song on that record is Hold On. There's a line like, go ahead and call the cops. You don't meet nice girls in coffee shops. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What does he mean by that? Right. And then Mark Kozilek from Red House Painters and Sun Kill Moon, he had a lot of just like lines where you could just, I never thought to say something like that. You know, the sentiment wasn't like, baby, I love you, or, Yeah. And I'm not saying that's every song. But it was just so freeing. I was like, there's no rules. Yeah. And a lot of this. And then just like the sounds and like the rawness and, I did play in a lot of kind of emo bands and the Warped Tour scene. Yeah. Too. And that influenced me on probably some ways. Sure. Which I haven't dove into as much, but and just sonically, like it not being like there's Sun Kill Moon Records and Tom Waits and all of them. Like, it was so freeing. There were no rules. It wasn't like overly compressed or anything. It was just there. And coming from like the emo world of where a lot of the drums are all samples over everything and like slammed, and like that's the sound of that, and it works great for that. It just kind of opened up my mind a lot. But I hope that answers the question.
No, that's great. That's great. I love that.
Eleventy Life is a production of Rock Candy Recordings.